Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we continue our study of the book of Job, the Sefer Iyov. We are in chapter 41. This is the last chapter in which we are going to hear God's response to the debate that Iyov had been having with his friends regarding the issues of theodicy, the issue of why good people suffer and why bad people prosper. The speech until now, just for a recap, is I want to point out, because chapter 41 is just going to be a powerful ending, but a continuation of the consistent theme that God has been putting out there. And that is the idea that it's not all about you. That when you look at the world with your narrow vision of me, I did this and therefore I deserve to get rewarded. I didn't do that and therefore I don't deserve to get punished, right? And whether it's as an individual or as a small group of people, we together as a group were righteous and did this and therefore we deserve to prosper and so on and so forth, and they are bad and therefore they do. So why is it that we don't see that way? Or even as a nation or as a humanity in totality. All of those, God tells us, is small-minded, is tiny, is minuscule, and most importantly is arrogant. The assumption that it's all about us and that everything is all about the tiny little, measly little, just minuscule little things that we represent upon this grand, within the grand creation that God created. He started telling us, do we know or understand the constellations and the stars and the planets and so on and their movements? Do we understand the nature of the world around us, the animals, the wild animals that we don't even know, the rain and the grass and the plants that grow in fields and jungles and forests that we aren't even aware exists, that have nothing to do with humanity? Are we aware? And then do we know the depths of the sea and the bottom of the ocean floor and so on? God has been, in the last several chapters, has been pointing out to us, it's not all about us. There's a grand, giant, massive plan that's way beyond us. And even today, as we learn and we see more and more and more about us, there's so much more to see. And the more we see, the more grand, the more incredibly masterful, the incredibly wonderful world and universe that's around us. What we need to do is learn humility. Now, of course, God doesn't seem to be addressing the actual question. Okay, bottom line though, this sounds wonderful, but why am I suffering if I don't deserve it? And God refuses to answer that question, but he does give us some hints to tell us how to handle that difficulty, that challenge that all of us go through at some point, that some in more extreme ways than others. Of course, Iyov in one of the most extreme possible, with the terrible, horrific suffering that he's been subjected to. And that is, be humble. Recognize the lesson that I'm trying to teach you. Recognize how small you are in this entire scheme of things. When you come to that recognition, God told us, and ended the last chapter that we read, God said to us, if you can go around the world and teach this lesson, teach humanity to be humble, there will be no more war. There will be no more fighting. There will be no more strife among you. In other words, what's God telling us is that I won't answer you, yes, there still will be innocent people that suffer. There still will be things in this world that you will not understand. However, if you're humble and you teach humility to the humanity of the world, then much of the suffering that people undergo, much of the strife that exists between human beings, and we must admit to ourselves that the vast majority of human suffering comes at the hands of other human beings. We can fix this by fixing ourselves. If we recognize humility, we can fix ourselves. If we recognize how small we are in the grand scheme of things, if we realize how important it is to recognize our part in this giant cosmos and within the intricate webs of nature that surround us, that it's our job to take care of ourselves, it's our job to take care of the world around us, the people around us, as opposed to exploit it, exploit other human beings, exploit other animals, exploit the planet we live on. If we recognize that and understand our humility within the place of this world, it will be an answer to much of the suffering. If you look at the suffering that Eov himself experienced, how much of it was at the hands of other human beings? How much of his things were taken? Now, it wouldn't solve everything, and God is not claiming that it will. He's explaining to us that we do not understand our place, right? Why he had to make the laws of nature the way he made them. Why he had to make things such as illnesses and genetic diseases and things which cannot be explained in any way that's satisfactory to our sense and understanding of justice. However, we can, through humility, learn and understand and come to conclusions which will lead to helping each other get through this and reduce and minimize the amount of suffering that we go through. And now, so let's pick up where we left off. God was in the middle of discussing the Leviathan, which is some massive sea monster, which, as we study God's description of this monster, we get more and more of the idea that it sounds very much like the mythical dragon. The typical dragon that we imagine today, from Hollywood's kind of dragon with scales and fire breathing and all this kind of stuff. A lot of this is mentioned here. And remember, in the days that Eov was written, this dragon was imagined to be an actual beast that lived out there. There was no reason for them to assume that this beast did not exist. There were numerous things they knew that were out there that they could not imagine and or that they'd never seen, but have heard reports of. So this is imagined to be an actual beast. But regardless, the point that we're going to see reiterated in this chapter is think of that mighty dragon and realize that that's part of my creation too. And remember how small you are and how powerless you are. And when you recognize that, that will be the key to help you getting through this terrible, terrible times. Hein tochalto nichzava, right? Anyone that hopes for him, right? Meaning, presumably it means hopes to capture him. Nichzava will be disappointed. Kazav means it'll be false. It'll be a wild goose chase. If you want to capture this dragon, forget about it. Hagam el mar'ov yutol. Simply by looking at it, you get thrown away. The power, the might of this animal. Lo achzor ki urenu. There is no one that is so achzor usually means cruel, but here most translators assume this means someone who is so fierce and mighty, ki urenu, who can wake him up from his sleep. Umihu lefanayis yatzov, and who is it that can stand before me? So God, why does he throw in me together with the fear of the dragon? God is dropping a reminder here in the middle of the speech. I'm not just talking about a dragon. I'm giving you the image of the dragon so that you can understand humility. You can understand how small you are and how minuscule you are in front of me. He is my creation, and God is going to emphasize this over and over again. This dragon, this mighty dragon, is a nothing before me. So how do you even think to come and understand me, right? How do you think to come and bring a claim against me? Mihiktimani va'ashalem, God says in verse 3. Who is the one who can, me, meaning anyone who comes before me for judgment, va'ashalem, I will, literally, ashalem usually means to pay him. So over here, what it means is, and I will give him what I believe he deserves. Tachas kol hashamayim lihu. Everything that is underneath the heavens is mine. I created it all, including this mighty dragon that you're so afraid of, that you have no power over, is mine, is under me. Even he, right? Anyone that comes before me, I'm the one that decides his fate. Lo acharish badov. And I'm going to, lo here, the question here is whether this lo is with a vav, meaning to him or regarding him, or lo with an aleph, meaning I will not. In other words, as in a negative word, lo. So if you read it as lo acharish badav, I will not be silent regarding him, right? I will not stop talking about him, right? Don't tell me, right, that this, I'm reading it as if it was lo with an aleph, just but if you read it with lo, then it's referring to the dragon. But I'm saying, lo, I will not stop talking about him, because you're trying to tell me, no, I want to know about me. I want to know why I don't have what I believe I deserve. I want to know why I'm suffering. I want to know why he, the other guy over there is rich, and even though he's evil. But God's saying, no, I'm not going to stop talking about the dragon, because I'm teaching you a lesson which doesn't sound to you like a direct answer to your question, but it is. Because this is what I want to talk about. I'm going to continue talking about this dragon, and I'm going to talk about how powerful he is, and of all of the incredible, literally value, the incredible praise of the things that he does. Who can reveal? In other words, who can explain or describe the garment? Right, that it wears. Remember, it wears these scales, which was going to be described very graphically soon. Bechefel risnomi avo, who can come, or who can get through the folds of his skin, of his armor. Dal seifanav mipiteach, who can open up the doors of his face. Right? In other words, his face is so powerful, so strong, and his jaws are so strong and mighty. Sivivos shinav ema, surrounding his teeth is just frightening and fear. His powerful, sharp teeth. Gava afike maginim, the scales that cover him are his pride, because they give him so much protection. Sagorcho samtsar, they are locked. In other words, you can't get an arrow between the scales. They're attached together with a seal, with a skinny or a thin seal between them, so you can't get between them. Echad bi'echad yigashu, each one reaches the other, right? Usually, often when there's scales, in order that there can be motion, right, there's a weak spot, but by him there is no weak spot. V'ruach le'avo b'neihem, wind cannot come between them. Ish ba'achiu yudubaku, each one of the scales is attached to the next. Yislaktu v'lo yisparadu, they are interlocked, they are like woven in between each other, like with some kind of interlocking mechanism, so that they don't separate. This gives him incredible protection. Atisho sav tahelar. This is where it seems more and more obvious that it's describing, very similar to what we imagine today, the image of a dragon. His when he sneezes or he breathes, fire comes out, and his eyes glow like the red glow of the morning sun. From his mouth, a fire, blazes of fire come firing out of his mouth. Kidode eish yismaltu, and the sparks of fire yismalotu come sprinkling out of his mouth. And smoke comes out of his nostrils, kidud nafuach v'yagmon, just like a pot that is boiling, with smoke and steam coming out. Nafsho gecholim tilahet, his the breath that comes from him. Right, nefesh, sometimes translated as soul, because the soul, as from Genesis, comes from God's breath. So the nefesh is often, means the breath. So his breath is so hot that it can fire up coals. V'lahav mi pivyet, saying flames come from his mouth. But savaro yalinos, in his neck, in his mighty neck, is resides just strength and power. Ulefanav todutz de'ava, and before him jumps and leaps might. Maplei v'zaro daveku, the layers, all right, of his muscle attached to each other. They're strong and attached. Yatzuk alov bal yimot, they are stuck upon him. They are like, yatzuk means is usually like when you cast a metal is latzuk. So in other words, his muscle is is like cast about him like strength of metal in such a way that it doesn't move, right? That's how strong and mighty he is, and how you cannot pierce the might of his muscle. Libo yatzuk k'mo oven. His heart is also yatzuk, is also cast like a stone. It's hard like a stone. Like it's not easy to pierce his heart with the spear. Yatzuk kefelach tachtis. And it's kind of like, it's tough like the bottom stone of a mill, which is, and in those days they used to mill their grain with a big stone, and on top of it another stone, and in between they would put the grain, and they would move the top stone to grind it against the bottom stone, which was a strong, tough stone. Misheso yaguru elim. So this is, here he's saying, right, when Miseso, I didn't read that correctly. Miseso, when he gets up, right, the Elim, literally the gods are fearful, right, meaning, the mighty beings, right, almighty beings, which, are frightened of him. Mishivarim yitzchato. I know, of course, we wonder, Elim, this is a monotheistic book. There aren't such thing as gods, but this is all this wide description of God trying to say that beneath me there's nothing, and beneath me, even this mighty creature who scares away everything, even the gods he scares away. He is beneath me because it's all beneath me. There's gods with a small g. Gods meaning everything else that thinks they're powerful, everything else that thinks they're strong, are afraid of him. Mishivarim yitzchata'u. From when he breaks things, right? They are frightful, and in tremendous fear from when he smashes things as he walks around. Masigeu cherev b'li tokom. As someone who reaches him with a sword, who tries to reach him with a sword, will never be able to get up afterwards. In other words, he's going to defeat anyone that tries to attack him with a sword. Chanis masav v'shirya, not a spear, not a lance or any kind of flying projectile projected against him will be able to conquer him. Yachshov l'teven barzel. He looks at iron as if it's straw. It means nothing to him. Le'etzri kavon nuchusha. When he looks at bronze or copper, nechusha is often translated as copper, but in the Tanakh, in the Bible, typically it really means bronze. He looks at it as if it's just rotted wood. It means nothing to him. Lo yavrichenu ven kashes. Someone who tries to shoot him with the arrow won't make him run. Lekash nebchu lo avnei kola. Right? The stones from a slingshot. To him, they're like throwing straw at him. Kikash nechshavu totach. If you try to come at him with clubs, these are all instruments of war that they used. To him, that's like trying to hit him with a stick made of straw. V'yischak l'ra'ash kidon. And when you try to throw a kidon, which is like a javelin, it's also a powerful spear, he just laughs at the noise that the javelin makes. Tachtav chadudei chores. Beneath him is sharp clay scales, which enables him to lie down on sharp rocks as if it's just smooth, soft mud. So a person would lie down on sharp rocks. It's painful, it's difficult, but he can lie down anywhere because nothing means anything to him. Nothing is sharp or painful to him. Yartiach kasir mitzula, because of the heat coming from his mouth and his nostrils, he makes the depths of the sea boil like a pot. Yom yosim kimerkacha. He makes the sea like a merkacha, like a manufacturing pot where you're boiling up different herbs in order to make medications. So he makes the sea boil. Achrav ya'ir nasiv. If you watch him in the sky, you'll see behind him is a lit up path, which is reminds us of the path of, let's say, a shooting star, where you see a trail of light. Yachshov tahom l'seva. He considers the depths of the sea, that which we're so afraid of. We think of it as so strong and mighty and powerful and unknown. He looks at it like it's an old man right? Which meaning that, someone that's physically weak, someone that you don't have to be scared of or afraid of. Ein alafor mashlo, right? There was no one on this world who can rule over him. He'aso livli chas, right? I'm sorry, he'asu livli chas, right? Because he is made in such a way that he has no fear of anything. And now we're about to read the last verse of God's speech, and while it sounds a little unusual, it makes you wonder, like, what point is God trying to make? We were hoping for some kind of profound wisdom coming from God himself, and here he is talking about this mighty dragon. It sounds like a movie or something, or a Hollywood production of some mighty dragon or ancient myth. But there's actually is profound wisdom. So listen carefully to this last verse. Ein kol gavoa yireh. I'm sorry, Ace kol gavoa yireh. He, the mighty dragon, sees anyone who is gavoa, who is proud, who is haughty, who is arrogant, who melech al kol bnei shochatz. Right? He is the king over everyone who thinks of themselves as great and mighty and arrogant. In other words, I'm giving you this image of a dragon, because he is my creation, right? He is under me. To me, he is nothing, but to you, he's this mighty, mighty creature. He is the rules over the haughty people. You look at him and you feel the fear, and you realize how small you are. You realize how it's not all about you. This is the point. You got to go back to when God gave us instructions in the last chapter. What is it that why am I telling you about the constellations that you don't know about, the depths of the sea that you don't understand, the birthing of the wild ibex, the wild mountain goats in the fields, up on the cliffs, that you don't know when they give birth and how long, their gestation period is, and how their babies find food, and the wonder of the universe around you. You don't know it, you don't see it, and it's not for you. There's grass being watered by rains in places where there's no human being. I do that so that the wild donkeys can get fine grass. Why? Right? Because I want you, right? God told us, remember, in the last chapter, see every proud person and bring him low, right? And take those evil people and crush them. How do you crush the evil that exists in this world between us? Right? Remember how he ended the last chapter, the last verse, right? Simolov kapecha, place your hand on him. Zichor milchama al tosaf, right? Remember what I'm teaching you, and then there will be no longer any war. Remember humility. Teach that lesson of humility to the world. That is how you overcome wickedness. That is how you overcome evil in this world, and that is how you reduce and conquer the suffering that is this world we live in. This is God's answer to Eov. This is God's answer to the three friends that came to Eov. This is God's answer to the fourth friend, Elihu. This is what God has to say. Look at nature. Look around at the world around us. Recognize how small we are. Recognize that it's not all about me. And no, do I have an answer to why am I suffering? No, God did not tell us. We don't know in the end. The bottom line is we don't know. We'll never know. There's no way we'll ever know. Because of that, we should recognize this humility, take that humility, bring it to the world around us, and make the world a better place, and thus reduce the suffering. Reduce the suffering. It is in our control if only we were humble. This is the lesson of God. This concludes God's speech to Eov. In 42, the next chapter, which is the final chapter of Eov, we will hear Eov's response to God. Thank you so much for studying this together with me. Looking forward to studying chapter 42 and, of course, the rest of this incredibly powerful book of Eov together. Have a wonderful day.